Order. The committee meets this morning to consider the nominations of Mr. Robert Storch to be the Inspector General of the Department of Defense, Dr. Lester Martinez-Lopez to be Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs, Mr. Christopher Lowman to be the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment, and Mr. Peter Beshar to be General Counsel of the Department of the Air Force. On behalf of the committee, I want to thank each of you for your willingness to return to public service. I would also like to welcome the guests and family members who are with us today. Mr. Storch, I welcome your wife Sarah and daughter Hannah. Dr. Martinez, I welcome your son Lucas. Mr. Lowman, I welcome your wife Tracy, daughter Shane, and son Ian. And Mr. Beshar, I welcome your wife Sarah, son Henry, and daughter Sophie. I know each of these nominees have family members who are probably watching from home, and I thank them for the support of your service as well. Mr. Storch, you are well qualified to be Inspector General of the Defense Department. In addition to your current role as the IG for the National Security Agency, you served as Deputy IG of the Department of Justice from 2012 to 2018. There are a number of important duties that will require your attention within the department. It will be your responsibility to conduct and supervise audits and investigations relating to the department, provide efficiency and effectiveness in the administration of the Defense Department, and lead the combating of fraud, waste, and abuse. You will also assist the Secretary of Defense in addressing extremism in the military. While we continue to believe that the number of extremists in the ranks remains very, very small and does not represent a systemic issue, even one is too many. The DoD IG has an important role to play in assessing the extent of this challenge. During your testimony, I would ask for your views on the issue and your objectives for this position. Dr. Martinez, you are nominated to be the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs, or the ASDHA. I would note your extensive record of service in military health care, both in and out of uniform, as having prepared you well for this position. The ASDHA is the principal advisor of the Secretary of Defense and the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness for all of the department's force, health protection policies, programs, and activities. The ASDHA is also responsible for execution of the department's medical mission, including the readiness of medical services during military operations, and for ensuring the health of the members of the military services, their families, and other eligible beneficiaries. In addition, you will govern the management of Defense Department health and medical programs, the sponsorship and oversight of medical research and development, and medical education and training. If confirmed, you will need to address a number of pressing challenges for the department, including the implementation of COVID-19 vaccination across the force, improving the staffing of Walter Reed, and providing medical support to the combatant commanders. I hope you'll address these challenges in your testimony. Mr. Lowman, you are nominated to be the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment. You bring more than 30 years of service as a Marine and Army civil servant to this position, experience that will be invaluable given the complex scope of responsibilities before you. One of the most pressing issues of the Defense Department is reducing its contested logistics vulnerabilities. The tyranny of distance challenge is often referenced in potential Pacific conflict scenarios, and we saw it proven true during our combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Although there have been several studies and tabletop exercises on this topic, the GAO found the Defense Department has still failed to implement more than 50 recommendations from a recent review. I would like to know your perspective on how the department can better navigate a contested logistics environment. Additionally, maintaining the operational readiness of the force has always been expensive. Given the rising cost of new platforms like the F-35, coupled with supply chain impacts from the pandemic, I hope you will share your plans for tackling these challenges. Finally, Mr. Beshar, you are nominated to be General Counsel of the Department of the Air Force. This position has a broad scope of responsibilities, including serving as legal advisor to the Secretary of the Air Force and other officers within the department, as well as to the chiefs of the Air Force and Space Force and their staffs. If confirmed, you will be tasked with providing legal services throughout the entire department in a variety of disciplines, including fiscal law, ethics, dispute resolution, environmental law, labor law, and litigation. In addition, the General Counsel exercises oversight of intelligence and other sensitive activities and investigations. These are wide-ranging and complex challenges that will require astute legal guidance. I would ask that you share how you plan to approach these issues and what objectives you have for this important position. Thank you again to our nominees. I look forward to your testimonies. Now, let me recognize the ranking member, Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to our witnesses for being with us and for their willingness to serve additionally. We've got quite a few challenges facing us, including in your areas of responsibility. And while the world is watching, Beijing hosts the Olympics and whitewash and ongoing genocide. China has also accelerated its economic and military aggression. The Russians are using their military might to try to redraw the borders of a sovereign country, and they're using energy as a weapon to try to split NATO, and Putin's ambitions won't stop in Ukraine. And we learned this firsthand when we spent some time in Romania just a few weeks ago. And they were it's very clear, yeah, maybe Ukraine, but Romania's next. And so this is not something that just is some speculation. Last week, we heard from General Kurilla that Iran is the #1 destabilizing threat in the Middle East, and about the risks of Iran using sanctions relief to support proxies that attack U.S. forces in the region. North Korea fired more missiles in the recent months than ever before, and apparently they're only pausing now because of the Olympics that are taking place, and they don't want to make China angry. The 2018 defense strategy is still good today, and it provides a roadmap to tackle these challenges, but we need to stay focused, and we'll need your help to do so in the positions that you will be assuming if you are confirmed, and you will be confirmed. At the same time, historic inflation is hitting every part of the Pentagon, from service member benefits to maintenance. It will make your jobs much, much more difficult. Lastly, on Afghanistan, I'm sure you all read the Washington Post reporting about the military's own investigation of the withdrawal. It seems like this review can teach us some really valuable lessons. We are the Committee of Jurisdiction over the Department of Defense. My colleagues and I have been asking for weeks to see the reviews that they've made. It is unacceptable for us to be finding out about these documents in the Washington Post before they are shared with us. I can't really say that in as strong terms as I'd like to. The last NDAA established a bipartisan commission to investigate what happened in Afghanistan, and I supported that. But this committee also has the duty to conduct its own oversight. I think we'll need to hear from some of the folks involved with this after-action report very soon in open and closed sessions. So we need strong civilian leadership at DOD who will work with Congress. So I look forward to hearing from all of you this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Inhofe. And now let me call on Mr. Storch for your testimony, please.
My apology. No problem. Thank you. Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today with regard to my nomination to be the Inspector General at the Department of Defense. The work of OIGs necessarily reflects that of the departments and agencies we oversee. The DoD, of course, has the critical mission of securing our national defense, a core function of government. And given the tremendous size and scope of the defense enterprise, the department, in one way or another, does essentially everything that government does. This requires its OIG to have all the tools in the oversight tool belt functioning well to effectively oversee these critical and diverse efforts. I am truly humbled to have been nominated to lead the team at the DoD OIG and believe that I am well positioned to do so. I currently am in my 5th year serving as the presidentially appointed Senate-confirmed Inspector General at the National Security Agency within the Department of Defense, and so am familiar with both the duties and functions generally applicable to a PASIG and with carrying out those responsibilities at an agency within the DoD where there is important integration between civilian and uniformed personnel and under the rules and policies applicable across the department. I am very proud of the efforts that my team and I have made to enhance the independence and the impact of our oversight work at NSA OIG, where I have emphasized getting to the root causes of the issues we uncover and holding agency leadership accountable for addressing them. I am also proud of the strides we have made to enhance the transparency of our work, including the launch of our independent public website, where we now regularly post unclassified versions of our semi-annual reports to Congress and unclassified versions or summaries of a number of our underlying reports. I also have emphasized the importance of engagement with the Congress, which helps us to understand its concerns and to provide oversight that may be helpful to inform its constitutional, legislative, and oversight functions. As the NSA IG, and before that as the Deputy IG and Whistleblower Ombudsperson, working with and for IG Michael Horowitz at the Department of Justice, I have worked to advance whistleblower rights and protections, which is something that I believe is fundamentally important for the operation of OIGs and indeed for good government. Employees and others perform an important service when they bring forward evidence of what they reasonably believe to be wrongdoing, and they never should suffer reprisal for doing so. Of course, none of this work is possible without people. As the NSA IG, and before that as the Deputy IG at DOJ, I've been actively engaged in promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and ensuring that we provide a positive working environment for our team. I'm very proud of the efforts we've made in this regard at NSA OIG, and if confirmed as the DoD IG, I will bring all of these areas of emphasis and approaches to leading that very important office. Prior to joining the OIG community, I spent some 24 years as a federal prosecutor at 2 U.S. attorneys' offices and between them at the Public Integrity Section of the Criminal Division here in Washington. I believe that being an IG and a prosecutor are similar in important respects. Both fundamentally call for doing what is right, and both call for the analysis of complex fact patterns and the exercise of independent judgment to reach that result. Also, as a former federal prosecutor and now as an IG, I understand the importance of ensuring that my office's work not be influenced or even perceived as being influenced in any way by partisanship. I am honored to have been nominated to be an IG by presidents of both political parties, and if confirmed, I shall continue to be true to the principle of nonpartisanship that is a hallmark of the IG system. I've been actively involved in working across the IG community over the past decade, founding and leading the SIGI Whistleblower Ombuds Working Group when I was at DOJ OIG, and serving for several years now as Vice Chair of the SIGI Tech Committee and as Chair of its Emerging Technology Subcommittee. As for the latter, I think it is essential that we as IGs be prepared to conduct meaningful, impactful oversight over the increasing use of new technologies within the government, and that we be able to use them ourselves appropriately in our work. I also was honored to be named in 2020 to serve as one of 4 IGs on the SIGI Integrity Committee, and recently to be named Vice Chair of the committee, which has the important role of considering allegations of misconduct made against IGs and their senior staffs. If I'm confirmed, I believe that all these experiences will serve me well in leading the diverse operations of the defense oversight community and coordinating with other IGs as appropriate. I'll end with what's most important to me and recognize and thank my brilliant and wonderful wife, who somehow will have put up with me for 30 years of marriage this May, and my 2 spectacular daughters. As I always say, they are the center of the universe. I'd also like to thank my family and friends who are watching online for their support. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Dr. Martinez-Lopez, please.
Good morning, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inoff, distinguished committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. I am extremely honored and humbled to be here as President Biden's nominee for Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs. And I am thankful for the trust placed in me by President Biden, Secretary Austin, and Undersecretary Cisneros. I was raised in Maricao, a small town in the mountains of Puerto Rico. Not in my wildest dream would I have thought I would be here in front of you today. During medical school, I was blessed to receive the Health Professional Scholarship. The financial support allowed me to dedicate myself to my studies and to excel. I was driven by an interest in saving lives through medicine and serving the United States. Upon graduation, I joined the active duty Army at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I completed my family practice residency. My plan was to fulfill my service obligation and return to Puerto Rico. But after volunteering for the first multinational force and observers deployment in the Sinai, I got hooked. I loved serving with the Army in the field. My service led me to command soldiers for 12 years, at home and abroad, served with field units for 7 years, become the chief medical officers of the United Nations mission in Haiti, and serve as a senior medical officer during our Hurricane Mitch response in Central America. My final assignment led me to command the United States Army Medical Research and Developmental Command in Fort Detrick, Maryland, where we worked on all aspects of medical research. Working with soldiers willing to risk their health and lives for our country inspired me to continue serving alongside them and to deliver them the best medical care possible. Those same factors would motivate me to care for our active duty service members, retirees, and their families if I'm lucky enough to be confirmed. After retiring from the Army, I was fortunate to lead a successful and fulfilling civilian life. I was administrator of the Lyndon B. Johnson Hospital, part of an integrated governmental system that provides critical healthcare services to the residents of Harris County, Texas. Thereafter, I became the first chief medical officer of an over 400-bed acute care hospital in Brandon, Florida. I learned a lot about patient safety, quality of care, and efficient health care management. One of my favorite experiences was being a member of the Army Science Board, where I participated in a multitude of studies. Through these experiences, I quickly learned that you don't need to wear a military uniform to serve the country and our communities. If confirmed, I believe that my previous military and civilian experiences will serve me well as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs. I will be honored to have the opportunity to continue to serve our service members, their families, and our retirees. I will strive for the highest level of force medical readiness and the readiness of the medical force. The future may bring difficult missions abroad and at home. To face these challenges, it is vital that we have a medically ready force. There must be a focus on prevention of injuries. However, if injured, we owe our service members the best medical response we can muster as a nation. We must continue to improve our care, develop solutions for new and old challenges, and work closely with our interagency friends and commercial partners to accomplish our mission. Our service members deserve no less. I understand the military healthcare system is very large and complex, but if confirmed, I'll do my best to improve the quality of care, the quality of the service, and the value proposition to all those served by the military health system. I will work hard to complete the military health system reform in a way that will strengthen the medical readiness of the armed forces and the readiness of the medical personnel by improving healthcare benefits and services to millions of beneficiaries composed of service members, military retirees, and family members. If confirmed, I commit to do my best for those serving our nation, and I also commit to work with this committee and Congress in a transparent and responsive way to meet the healthcare needs of our service members and their families and our retirees. Senators, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Lowman, please.
Good morning, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe.
Your microphone, please.
Good morning, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, and committee members. I am deeply honored to come before you today as President Biden's nominee for Assistant Secretary of Defense for sustainment. I would like to thank the President for nominating me and Secretary Austin and Deputy Secretary Hicks for their confidence in me. If confirmed, I am excited for the opportunity to continue serving our nation in this critical role during these extraordinary times. I want to start off by acknowledging my wife, Tracy, who is here with me today and has been by my side for the last 25 years. Tracy is the bedrock of our family, whose support has made my career and service to this nation possible. Our greatest joy are our 4 children, 2 of which are here today with me. Shane, a graduate of Virginia Commonwealth University, and Ian, a high school senior. Our other 2 children, Ryan and Addison, are currently students at the University of Virginia and are watching virtually. In fact, my daughter Addison is currently enrolled as a Navy intern with a focus on computer science, and so she will continue the tradition of service. I am also grateful to my immediate and extended family for their sustained and honorable service to this country. We are a multi-generational, multi-service family representing every service and the Coast Guard going back over 80 years. My family's legacy of service has been a guiding force during my 36-year career, which began in 1984 on the well-known yellow footprints at Parris Island. I started my post-Marine Corps life with the Army as a young GS-5. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that I would one day be a nominee for the Assistant Secretary of Defense. I've served alongside both women and men, soldiers and civilians who dedicated their lives helping to sustain the readiness of our forces. I could not be more proud to call them colleagues and friends, and if confirmed, I will continue to serve at their side. The purpose of the Department of Defense is to provide military forces needed to deter war and ensure our nation's security. To accomplish this mission, we must posture our sustainment capabilities to enable the readiness and meet the nation's requirements when needed. Sustainment is most effective when integrated with the joint force and in coordination with our allies and industry partners. I appreciate the importance of sustainment, and throughout my career, I have learned that resilient sustainment is critical to enhancing our military effectiveness. The role of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for sustainment is to ensure the resources needed to execute the department's mission are readily available while maximizing execution and affordability. The Assistant Secretary must ensure the services have the policies and processes necessary to succeed, and the department has the proper oversight to ensure our strategic readiness posture is sufficient. The ultimate goal is to provide our service members with the most modern, capable, and sustainable military equipment and supplies necessary to deter or defeat our adversaries. Secretary Austin has laid out clear priorities in his March 2021 message to the force: defend the nation, take care of our people, and succeed through teamwork. To that end, and if confirmed, my priorities will be to ensure our supply chain is resilient and defended, our civilian workforce is trained and equipped with the necessary analytical skills and tools needed to sustain a military in a complex, multi-domain environment, that our organic industrial base is modernized and fortified to meet the challenges of sustaining technologies required on a modern battlefield. And finally, that our modernization programs account for life cycle and sustainment costs early in the acquisition process. I will work towards sustainment strategies that balance readiness requirements with cost in order to produce the maximum amount of combat power. There are numerous challenges in each of these areas, but with the help of the members of this committee and Congress, we will make the necessary improvements to ensure sustained readiness far into the future. If confirmed, I pledge to work with Congress, the services, industry, our partners and allies, and other stakeholders to enhance and sustain military readiness. The heavy responsibility and demands of this position are evident. Given the critical nature of the role and the importance of the mission, I will dedicate myself fully to this task. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Beshar, please.
Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Inhofe, distinguished members of the committee, I consider it the honor of my life to be nominated by President Biden to serve as the General Counsel of the Department of the Air Force and have the opportunity to appear before this committee. A moment like this is really about all those who have supported you. And at the top of that list is my dear family. Mr. Chairman, thank you for recognizing my wife, Sarah, who has been at my side, my blessed side, for 31 years, and our children, Isabel, Henry, and Sophie. I'd like to offer my comments this morning in the context of the 3 priorities set by Secretary Austin for the Department of Defense. First, defend the nation. Non-kinetic attacks pose a significant threat to our national security. As the Air Force develops its next-generation air dominance program, modernizes its nuclear enterprise, and builds out its Space Force, cybersecurity and technological innovation will be critical priorities. Over the past decade, I've developed domain expertise in cybersecurity with a particular focus on public-private partnerships to protect our critical infrastructure. I've had the privilege of testifying before many of you in prior appearances before the Senate Homeland Security, Banking, and Commerce Committees about ways in which government and industry must come together to protect our critical infrastructure. Second, take care of our people. The brave men and women of our armed forces represent the best of America. To honor their commitment and sacrifice, society has a solemn duty to protect them, as well as their families and our veterans. As recent reports have shown, there's important work that needs to be done to fully meet this responsibility. Early in my career, I had the great privilege of serving as the special assistant to former Secretary of State Cyrus Vance in the peace negotiations in the Balkans. It was my first exposure to war, and it sparked a profound respect for our military and a deep interest in our national security. As chair of the Veterans Committee at John Jay College for Criminal Justice and executive sponsor of our Veterans Program at Marsh McLennan, I spearheaded a series of initiatives under the banner, "We've Got Your Six," to help veterans with jobs and enhanced benefits. If confirmed, one of my top priorities would be to support Secretary Kendall and the rest of the department's leadership in implementing the sexual assault reforms recently approved by Congress and fostering a culture of integrity and inclusion. Third, succeed through teamwork. In this era of strategic competition, the security challenges before our country require intense collaboration across the executive branch, with Congress, with industry, and with our allies. For the past 17 years, I've served as the General Counsel of Marsh McLennan, a global professional services firm. With the support of my colleagues, I've built a world-class and diverse legal and compliance team. And I've developed the project management skills to drive policy change across an organization of more than 80,000 employees in 100 countries. If confirmed, I look forward to partnering with the civilian and military lawyers within the Department of the Air Force to provide sound and pragmatic advice in support of the mission articulated by Secretary Kendall. One team, one fight. I want to express my appreciation to all the members of the committee for your consideration. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I have a series of questions that are directed at all nominees. You may answer in unison. Have you adhered to applicable laws and regulations governing conflicts of interest?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you assumed any duties or taken any actions that would appear to presume the outcome of the confirmation process?
No.
No.
Exercising our legislative and oversight responsibilities makes it important that the committee, its subcommittees, and other appropriate committees of Congress receive testimony, briefings, reports, records, and other information from the executive branch on a timely basis. Do you agree, if confirmed, to appear and testify before this committee when requested?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you agree to provide records, documents, and electronic communications in a timely manner when requested by this committee, its subcommittees, or other appropriate committees of Congress, and to consult with the requester regarding the basis for any good faith delay or denial in providing such records?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you ensure that your staff complies with deadlines established by this committee for the production of reports, records, and other information, including timely responding to hearing questions for the record?
Yes.
Yes.
Will you cooperate in providing witnesses and briefers in response to congressional requests?
Yes.
Will those witnesses and briefers be protected from reprisal for their testimony or briefings?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And just the information of my colleagues, we anticipate a vote at noon. At that vote, we will hopefully have a committee hearing off the floor to move military nominations alone. We'd like to get this done, otherwise we will lose some valuable time getting military personnel confirmed, including General Kurilla, who has been appointed as the new CENTCOM commander. Now, Mr. Storch, the IG plays so many critical roles, but one critical role is in maintaining the ethical sensitivity and priorities of the men and women of the armed forces. I think it springs from at least three sources, probably more: the constitutional oath one takes, the personal integrity one expects of a member of the military services, and also the ethic of protecting, not exploiting your subordinates. How can the IG help raise the ethical standards and insist on ethical qualifications?
Thank you for the question, Chairman Reed. You know, IGs, I believe, play an important role in that area in a number of different ways. One of which is by doing audits, evaluations, and other oversight work that examines different issues across the department and ensures that the department is carrying out its responsibilities appropriately and in compliance with all requirements. On the other side, of course, we have investigations division, and where people don't meet those standards, it needs to be understood that IGs will appropriately investigate administrative misconduct, making findings where appropriate, and also referring matters for civil or criminal investigation if that's appropriate. Additionally, beyond all those sort of functions, I think IGs play a critical role in the communication of ethical standards. I mentioned whistleblowers in my opening statements. I think that's critically important that it be understood throughout an agency, up to the very top, that we encourage people, and people are encouraged, to come forward if they see something that's wrong so that someone can look into it and, if appropriate, take corrective action. And so that message needs to be disseminated across the department, really starting at the very top. Additionally, IGs participate routinely in trainings and other programs that help to make clear to the workforce the standards that are expected. So I think there are myriad ways in which that can be done, and if confirmed, I look forward to working on it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beshar, am I pronouncing that correctly, by the way?
More or less, Mr. Chairman. Beshar.
Beshar. Well, in Rhode Island, it's Beshar, but Beshar for the moment. Thank you. I apologize.
Anything works.
I apologize. In a similar vein, the General Counsel of the Air Force will have a significant role in maintaining the ethical standards of the Air Force, and again, springing from the constitutional oath that we all take, the integrity of the individuals we expect, and also for particularly military personnel, placing oneself behind responsibilities to subordinates. Can you comment on your approach?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I really think of the role in two ways. One is to serve as the principal legal advisor, as you indicated, to the Secretary and the leadership. Secretary Kendall has articulated 7 operational imperatives, and I would want to consult with the Secretary about how the Office of General Counsel could best support him. And the second is really as the Chief Ethics Officer, and trying to inculcate an environment of integrity and inclusion, not simply to comply with the law, but also to engender trust with other stakeholders.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lowman, congested logistics is a critical aspect. And Napoleon said an army moves on its stomach. And, well, we're moving in the air, on sea, on land, but we've got to move. Can you briefly comment on your approach to dealing with this issue?
Senator, thank you. So as you rightly point out, Senator, global operations require secure access to supply chains. It requires secure access to both inter and intra-theater lift, whether that's surface lift or airlift capabilities. And so operations, for example, in the Indo-Pacific would require the necessary posture and positioning of our supplies. It requires the necessary end-to-end supply chain oversight and visibility such that we understand where the supplies are in fact positioned and that they are positioned at echelon ready for use in support of any operation regardless of where that is globally. So if confirmed, Senator, I would certainly work with my staff on ASDS as well as the COCOMs and the services to ensure that end-to-end visibility is available and that we are reviewing the strategic positioning of supplies.
Thank you very much. Dr. Martinez-Lopez, my time is short, but could I ask you what you consider, and very briefly, the greatest threat to the long-term viability of the military healthcare system?
Senator, thank you very much for the question. I think readiness is the most important aspect to military health system. So the challenge is what's happening today in order to us to sustain the readiness. Resources, how many resources have we available? And the last question, and the tricky question is, what are the threats? Threats keep changing, especially in the medical field. We never dream of having a COVID maybe 10 years ago, and now we're dealing with it. So what will be the next threat, and how well we're going to be equipped and resourced to deal with that threat? So we have to be nimble, and we have to be ready to. I think that will be the biggest challenge the department will face.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Senator Inhofe, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Beshar, the last NDAA that we just enacted some of the most sweeping changes to the Uniform Code of Military Justice since it's been created. To allow the military services to implement these reforms, we put into place a 2-year implementation period. And with your background, people have heard me talk about this, but why is it so important for the Air Force to have time to implement these changes?
Senator Inhofe, sexual assault in any context is reprehensible. Sexual assault in the context of the military is particularly destructive because of its impact on unit cohesion and force readiness. The changes that the Congress have approved, taking specific crimes out of the chain of command, as well as the IRC recommendations that have been embraced by the Department of Defense, are substantial undertakings and are going to require really sustained commitment from military commanders across the field, as well as the other senior leaders within the organization. And so the goal is to get it right, naturally. And if confirmed, that's what I would try to do.
And to get it right, it does take time sometimes. Mr. Storch, I've heard some people recently calling for the use of artificial intelligence to monitor service members' communications in order to root out potential extremists before they. To me, this is one of the most outrageous things that I've ever heard. And I'd just ask you, in your view, what are the risks to service members' civil liberties from using artificial intelligence to monitor their activities? And how would you ensure that service members' civil liberties are protected?
Ranking Member Inhofe, as indicated in my initial statement, artificial intelligence and emerging technologies is an issue in which I've taken particular interest in the IG community, and I lead the IG community's subcommittee in that area, where we're looking at ways to do oversight over its use. Additionally, at NSA OIG, we've been looking at that, and we currently have a joint review that's pending, actually with the Department of Defense IG, looking at the integration of artificial intelligence into the NSA SIGINT activities to ensure that that's being done in compliance with DoD and IC guidelines. So those are issues with which I'm generally familiar, and if confirmed, I would work with the team at the DoD IG to examine the issue you've identified and welcome the opportunity to engage with you and your staff on any concerns.
Sure, and I know that's why I asked you the question, because you have that familiarity and that background.
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Storch, there have been thousands of requests from the service members for religious accommodations to the department's COVID vaccine mandate, and there have only been 12 accommodations granted thus far. That's 3 for Marines, and I think the 9 of them for airmen. And each of those service members is already planning to leave. So does it seem reasonable to you that services would grant only 12 religious accommodations when they have received over some 10,000 requests? And I'm not going to ask you, there wouldn't be time to answer anyway how you want to correct this situation, but will you commit to reviewing this issue and so we can have something in place to correct the problem?
So the OIG obviously has jurisdiction over all programs and operations of the department. I know that the office has been engaged in looking at different aspects of the COVID response and has a pending audit related to the vaccine distribution plan. It's a rapidly changing situation. If I'm confirmed, I certainly will commit to meeting with the team at the OIG and discussing the situation as it then exists. And if it's appropriate to do a review, then looking forward to pursuing that. That's something I discussed with the team and would welcome the opportunity to discuss with you as well, sir.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe. Senator Shaheen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to each of the nominees, and thank you to you and your families for being willing to come back into public service and take on these important positions. Dr. Martinez-Lopez, I want to begin with you because in December, with over 20 of my colleagues, we sent a bipartisan letter to the Department of Defense expressing our concern over the July 2021 DoD Inspector General report on PFAS blood testing for firefighters. I'm going to ask you about this as well, Mr. Storch. But I was pleased the department moved quickly to provide a briefing, but I'm very concerned that there still requires oversight of all PFAS matters and that's going to require continuing attention. So I would ask you, Doctor, you talked about the focus on prevention of injuries, but if confirmed, will you commit to really doing something with this data so we can assess what it says about the potential health impacts of PFAS and those who are exposed to it?
Senator, PFAS and the threat it presents is, all those chemicals have been with us for many, many years, 40 or more. And now we're learning that some may be dangerous to us. So yes, if confirmed, I commit to look into this issue, look at ways to, if we could get working with the services to get rid of those that we can get rid of. And if not, figure out a way to mitigate the exposure. And again, working with the service, will given the medical, environmental health experience that we bring. And hopefully we'll come out with a solution set that will, A, prevent service members and family members from getting exposed to these chemicals, if not, ways to mitigate, and if needed, treat it for the conditions.
Well, thank you. One of the things that the department is doing right now is fulfilling its requirement to provide PFAS blood testing for firefighters, but it doesn't encompass the broader military family. So do you believe that blood testing for service members and military families stationed at installations with known PFAS exposure should be offered blood testing?
Senator, again, this is a concerning issue to all of us. We need to come out with an action plan. If confirmed, I'll work with the Health Affairs team trying to figure out an answer to your question. Right now, I'm not prepared to answer one way or the other because I don't know, but I hope that if confirmed, I'll be able to come back to you and give you a clinical answer that is relevant to those exposed to these chemicals.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure that this committee will be interested in working with you on that. Mr. Storch, I talked about the DOD IG report back in July on PFAS exposure. The report revealed that sufficient protective measures have not been taken to reduce exposure to PFAS substances, and that PFAS blood testing programs for firefighters were underutilized to track exposure. So can you talk about how you would see your role in monitoring progress related to PFAS testing and remediation?
Absolutely, Senator. You know, I am familiar with the report you're talking about, obviously, and it's part of all OIG's work, not just to issue reports, but then to follow up as appropriate, right? So we track the recommendations across the IG community. I'm not obviously familiar with the particular status of those, but if I am confirmed, I certainly would look into that. And it's the IG's job to make sure that the agency is taking timely and appropriate action to meet the intent of our recommendations. So I would work with the team at the OIG to make sure that's being done. And additionally, as we do that, we often find areas for additional review that are warranted. And we'd continue to be open to that as well, and if appropriate, do such a review. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I know this committee looks forward to working with you on that and to doing what we can to be responsive. Mr. Lowman, again, if confirmed, you'll be responsible for overseeing energy and environmental policies within the department. Identifying the source of PFAS in the environment is crucial to protecting safe drinking water in our communities, particularly at DOD installations. So can you talk about how you'll work with the EPA to develop and employ new methods to address PFAS?
Senator, thank you. So first, let me just say that the safety of our service members, families, and local communities is of paramount importance. I understand that the Deputy Secretary of Defense just signed out a memorandum establishing an Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy, Environment, and Installations. And so if confirmed, I will work very closely with the new ASD EI&E to make sure that there is a deliberate and efficient transfer of the personnel and resources and policies from ASDS to the ASD IE&E to enable success and continue momentum in this area.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I'm out of time, but Mr. Beshar, I would just point out that the Air Force was very responsive when PFAS showed up in the water at the former Pease Air Force Base in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And I would hope that you and your role will continue to support those efforts and encourage continued responsiveness on the part of the Air Force when PFAS shows up at installations.
I will, Senator.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Senator Shaheen. Senator Kramer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here, for your willingness to serve, and congratulations to all of you. I have a couple of questions, Dr. Martinez, that I want to focus in on with you, and a little bit of feedback there. I'm going to start with, you're obviously familiar with fertility awareness, so fertility awareness-based method, a natural type of pregnancy prevention that's used by several women. Obviously, it enables them to observe and chart changes in one or more biomarkers. It's a method, of course, that has no side effects. It's relatively inexpensive. Currently, though, there's a lack of access to this at military installations or treatment facilities, and of course, TRICARE doesn't cover it. Would you commit to looking into adding fertility awareness-based methods to the options that our service members have when they're doing their family planning?
Senator, thank you very much for the question. You know, the health care of all service members, including female service members, is of utmost importance to a department. If I get confirmed, I commit to you, we need to look at ways to bring parity for the reproductive health issues relating to our service members. So yes, I'll be looking into those kind of issues, and we need to come about with a parity equation with the rest of the nation and how we address all those issues.
I appreciate that. We'll look forward to that upon your confirmation and to following up. Also, DARPA's pandemic preparedness program, Doctor, was really integral in lots of ways. I mean, it was very successful, but it was particularly integral for antibody discovery programs, and that, of course, led to a therapeutic to combat COVID. And now I think we see, as we look back on that and as we look forward, that these therapies are probably the best defense and maybe even the best offense in combating COVID and perhaps other viruses in the future. So there's a company in North Dakota, Genovac, that's been leading and working with DARPA in antibody discovery. And through them, I've seen just how very fast we're able to respond and how quickly we can develop these targeted responses to other viral threats. So do you agree that we should be devoting as much, if not more, resources for therapeutic discovery and development? And maybe if you just want to elaborate a little bit on what else DOD can do to prepare for future pandemics along these lines.
Senator, my last posting was a commander for Dietrich, and I'm very proud to have been part of that exercise of bringing about new technology that now we see all over serving the country well. I was partnered with DITRA, I was partnered with DARPA, trying to advance all this kind of technology. And by the way, mRNAs, vaccines, that's where they came about from.
Yes.
The genesis of all that new technology was a DoD-based research, program. So if confirmed, sir, I would love to keep being a proud member of that team that advances the science for the country and comes out with new solution sets to the new problems that we're going to be facing.
That's great, Doctor. I might then use this opportunity, as I often like to invite you to North Dakota, to Fargo, to see some of what's going on right there. And you can either come in February, that earns you a lot of street cred, or you can come in June, which is just nice to, time to visit. With that, I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kramer. Now, via WebEx, let me recognize Senator Gillibrand, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to all our nominees. First, for Mr. Storch. Mr. Storch, in your current position as NSA Inspector General, are you familiar with the DoD's IG's ongoing assessment of the response from DoD components to the intrusions of unidentified aerial phenomenon into controlled DoD airspace, as well as UAP activity around naval and air operations? Further, do you think the NSA has been responsive to the DoD's IG inquiries?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'm afraid that's not an issue with which I am currently familiar. However, if confirmed, I certainly am willing to look into that and to take any action that's appropriate.
Well, thank you. And if confirmed, can I have your commitment to sustain this comprehensive assessment until it reaches its appropriate conclusion, including the possibility of follow-on actions such as audits or investigations if the assessment recommends as much?
Well, again, I honestly am not familiar with that particular review, but as is typical, I think, across the IG community, when a new IG comes in, if they're pending matters, those would continue in the office, and it would be perfectly appropriate to examine them. And if I am confirmed, I can assure you that anything that's pending in the office, I'll give my best attention to, and if there's appropriate follow-up to be done, we'll do it.
Okay, so since you aren't familiar, can you please familiarize yourself with this issue and respond to both of those questions in writing before your confirmation, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Lowman, recently Balfour Beatty Corporation, a privatized military housing contract, pleaded guilty to defrauding the DoD and was ordered to pay $65 million in damages. Balfour Betty's lack of maintenance unnecessarily exposed military families to toxic mold, insect infestations, water leaks, and burst pipes, causing health problems like migraines, asthma, and skin conditions. Despite the fraud, Balfour still manages military housing on installations across the country. In January, I joined 16 of my Democratic colleagues in sending the Department of Defense a letter asking how they plan to protect service members and their families going forward. If confirmed, how do you plan on correcting deficiencies in military privatized housing systems to protect service members and their families from hazardous living conditions?
Thank you, Senator. So our service members sacrifice much in the service of this nation, along with their families. And at a minimum, they deserve safe, clean housing to reside in. And so I understand, Senator, that the Deputy Secretary of Defense signed out a memorandum yesterday creating an Assistant Secretary of Defense for energy installations and the environment. So if confirmed, I will work closely with the ASD, EI&E to ensure that we have a deliberate and planned transition of the resources, the policies, and the personnel necessary to ensure that that organization is stood up and is able to hold contractors such as Balfour Beatty accountable.
Thank you. Mr. Beshar, congratulations and welcome. I have a tough question for you too. A November 2021 DoD IG report highlighted several deficiencies with the department's special victims investigation and prosecution capabilities. The report specifically identified shortcomings within the Air Force's prosecution of special victims cases, finding that the Air Force only assigned special victims certified prosecutors in 6% of eligible cases, which is by far the lowest among the services. It's unacceptable to not assign trained personnel to deal with these complex and sensitive cases. If confirmed, do you intend to assist the Secretary in addressing this issue? And do you further commit to ensuring there are enough trained personnel to handle these sensitive cases?
Senator Gillibrand, fostering a culture of integrity and inclusion within the department is extraordinarily important. I think the diversity is what makes our forces the greatest in the world. I am not familiar in my current position outside of government with the level of staffing, but certainly trying to have a number of qualified investigators able to look into those types of matters would be important. And if confirmed, I would work toward that goal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beshar. And with my last 10 seconds for Mr. Martinez-Lopez, in January, I led a letter calling on TRICARE to expand its coverage to include at-home testing for service members and their families without a physician referral. Will you commit to expanding coverage of the at-home testing in order to ensure our forces' sustained readiness? And I have 3 questions specifically on suicide and mental health capacity, which I will forward for the record so that you can respond to it after the hearing.
Senator, thank you very much for the question. Healthcare parity of the services we offer to our service members, family members, and retirees has to be very important to us. So if confirmed, I'll look at with my team. I'll work hard to understand better what prevents us from achieving parity, and we'll strive for that. If I need help, I probably may come back to ask for help. But I commit that I will look at solution sets. I'll bring healthcare parity for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our nominees.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. Let me recognize Senator Blackburn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to each of you, I want to say thank you for your willingness to serve our country and for your family's willingness to allow you to serve our country. Mr. Lowman, I want to come to you first. FSRM is something that we in Tennessee talk about a good bit because, as you're aware, we have a heavy military presence in our state, and this is something important to us. What is the current backlog on FSRM? What is that deficit right now?
Senator, thank you for that question. So FSRM is critical to sustaining readiness of our
what's
services.
the deficit?
Ma'am, I'm not familiar with the current deficit and would have to take.
I think we want to get that number because it is billions in backlogged projects. And then do you think it is an issue of priority or under-resourcing that DOD has acquired such a backlog?
Senator, thank you again. I understand, Senator, that the Deputy Secretary of Defense has created a new position, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Installations, Energy, and the Environment. So this particular FSRM topic is no longer in the ASDS sustainment portfolio. However, if confirmed, I would be happy to work with the ASD EI&E to better understand the issue and to ensure that you get answers to your question.
Well, that it is a portfolio that has grown so large that it takes the attention of more than one.
Yes, ma'am.
At this point. And it does have an impact, as you're aware, on recruiting, on retention, and on the programs that are being implemented and the projects that are being carried out inside those facilities. So I would like a commitment from you that if you are confirmed, that you will visit Arnold Engineering Development Center in Tennessee with me. This is an Air Force base, and at Arnold, they are carrying out our hypersonics testing. That is where we have our Air Force wind tunnels. It is where autonomous vehicles are being tested for the Air Force. Its importance is growing because of Space Force location in Huntsville, Alabama, which is in close proximity to Arnold on the Tennessee side of the line. So it is quite important to us. Do I have your commitment?
You do, ma'am.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Beshar, welcome. How does the Air Force balance this initiative that Secretary Austin has started with a working group on countering extremist activities? And this is something that from our families of enlisted men and women, I'm hearing a good bit about this, because you've got to hit a balance with that so that you, and you have to look at how it impacts the rights of the person in uniform and their personal beliefs, and the role that the department is going to have there, and protecting these civil liberties. So how do you do that?
Senator Blackburn, I think the overwhelming majority of airmen and guardians, and indeed the 2 million plus members of the total force, serve this country with honor and dignity and consistent with their oaths. There's the working group that's been established to try to provide guidance around the contours of prohibited activities, and if confirmed, trying to strike the very balance that you've spoken about between First Amendment rights and the need for good order and discipline would be a priority.
Thank you. Mr. Storch, I want to come to you on this COVID vaccine issue that we have with DOD. At Fort Campbell, we've heard a little bit about this, as you can imagine. And by the way, Mr. Chairman, I noticed that we have a series of letters from Senator Johnson in his capacity. Have these been submitted to the nominees or submitted to the record for discussion?
Excuse me, ma'am?
Okay, I'm referencing the letters.
There are a series of letters that Senator
Yes,
Tuberville.
have they been submitted to?
They have not been submitted to the record yet.
Okay,
ma'am.
let's submit them to the record and
Without
as
objection.
questions for response. I think that would be important to you, Mr. Storch. I would like to know where your views are on implementing the vaccine mandate on civilian personnel and on our DOD contractors, and then with our men and women in uniform, how the consideration is given for their medical and religious exemption procedures, how we're addressing natural immunity, which is stronger than the immunity received from a vaccine. I'm over time, so let's do all of that for the record. That gets you off the hook right now. And Dr. Martinez, well, okay, Mr. Chairman, can he give his answer?
A brief answer, please, for Senator Blackburn.
Yeah, yes, Senator. All I was going to really say is that, IGs are authoritative when we speak based upon our work. And so I'm aware that the DoD IG is doing some work in the areas you've discussed. And as I indicated previously, if there's additional work to be done after I'm confirmed, we'll look into that as well. I can't make that assessment now. So that's it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. And could I ask the witnesses to move their microphones closer? That'll help us all hear you much better. Thank you very much. Now let me recognize Senator Blumenthal, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I want to second the remarks made by Senator Shaheen about the importance of combating pollution from PFAS, very important to Connecticut, where some of the runoffs from our military bases have threatened civilian populations. But PFAS is only one of the chemicals that seems to be emanating from bases around the United States, maybe around the world. I'm sure that my colleague, Senator Hirono, has focused on the Navy's Red Hill fuel storage facility in Hawaii in her preparation for this hearing. Camp Lejeune in North Carolina has literally hundreds, maybe thousands of families severely adversely affected by toxic water that caused cancer and other very serious health issues for thousands of veterans in their families. My colleagues and I, Senator Tillis and I, have led an effort to give those families a measure of justice. It's called the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, bipartisan legislation that would correct unfair legal barriers and enable people affected by toxic exposure at Camp Lejeune to present evidence of exposure before a court, which right now they can't practically do. And I've called on the Department of Defense to provide a national audit of all military installations to determine where contaminants are present. Mr. Lowman, will you commit to doing a national audit of all military installations to determine where contaminants are, what can be done to stop them, and how to provide justice to families and veterans affected?
Senator, thank you. So our service members deserve to serve on installations free of contamination. And so if confirmed, what I can commit to is working very closely with the new Assistant Secretary of Defense for Installations, Environment, and Energy to ensure that we gain an understanding of where those contaminants lie. Sorry, tripping on that word, Senator. So where those contamination areas are on our installations, and then initiating the appropriate actions to remediate that contamination.
Well, don't you think that a national audit of military installations is a good idea? And I know you're going to work closely with the new secretary and so forth and so on, but you personally, don't we need to do it?
Senator, I do believe that we need to identify where those areas of contamination are and what is driving the contamination, and then taking on the necessary and appropriate actions to remediate those as necessary. Our service members absolutely deserve a clean environment to live on and operate from.
Well, I really think that a systematic change here is required. Appointing a new assistant secretary maybe will help, but what's really needed is action in this area. And I would like to ask you, do you support the right of individuals exposed to toxic water at Camp Lejeune since 1953 to bring legal action against the United States government, as would be provided in the Camp Lejeune Justice Act?
Senator, I'm not familiar with that particular issue, but believe strongly that wherever contamination occurs and personnel that have been contaminated, that there is redress available to those service members and that be addressed appropriately. I would commit to working closely within the department, within the senior Army leadership, and certainly within the legal channels to better understand that issue. And if confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for sustainment, wherever sustainment activities are contributing to that contamination, developing the necessary policies and processes to remediate that as quickly as possible.
Well, I appreciate that answer. I will be following up with more questions for the record. Mr. Storch, you and I talked at some length about your record in NSA, which I thought was commendable for emphasizing transparency. And I hope that you will cooperate with this committee in trying to move toward declassifying more information that the public needs and deserves, particularly, for example, on civilian casualties of drone strikes, where IG reports, I think, could be extremely informative and valuable to public understanding of the perhaps unforeseen and unintended effects that have to be avoided in the future. So I appreciate your commitment to transparency, and I believe we have your commitment to continuing it.
Senator, I believe very strongly that a core function of IGs is to promote transparency in the work that we do, and I'm going to do everything I can if I'm confirmed to continue that.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Cotton, please.
Dr. Martinez, I want to speak about the Defense Health Agency. When it was founded a few years back, one concern that we heard is that services might pull back staffing from joint medical billets if they perceived higher needs in their own commands. This was enough of a concern for the committee that in the most recent NDAA, we passed a provision that required the services to maintain 85% of the manning requirements from the 2016 Joint Table of Distribution at joint hospital and clinic settings. I'm concerned that what we heard at the time when the DHA was founded, it may be coming to pass. I know you've been out for a few years. As you prepared for the hearing, prepared to take on this responsibility, is this a concern you've heard that services may be pulling back somewhat from these joint medical billets to make sure their own facilities are fully staffed?